Welcome back, gang. In this tutorial, I'll discuss another strategy for achieving coherence in our writing, the use of consistent topic strings. This strategy is closely related to keyword repetition. They both involve repeating a small family of words, synonyms, and pronouns that identify the most important ideas in a passage of text. The use of consistent topic strings is a special kind of keyword repetition. The distinguishing features are the location and grammatical function of the repeated words. I took both of my examples from academic papers published in scholarly journals. As usual, I've made a few small edits for the sake of clarity. The first example comes from one of the most famous scientific papers ever published, A Structure for Deoxyribonucleic Acid by James Watson and Francis Crick. There's a lot of text here, so please pause the video and read it on your own. You won't have to understand all of the content in order to see how it uses topic strings. Are you ready? These are the first 3 paragraphs of the paper. The first sentence makes it clear that the paper will be about the structure of DNA. Did you notice how many times the word structure is repeated throughout the passage? Let's look. Let's also notice that twice, but only twice, the passage uses a close synonym of structure, which is the word model. The first thing that should strike you is that the passage repeats the word structure several times. I've marked 6 of them. All of this repetition is not a weakness. It does not suggest that the authors have a limited vocabulary. Rather, structure is the most important idea in the passage, and the passage repeats the word often so that the audience will remember that. So far, I've been discussing the value of repetition in general. Now I want to discuss the repetition of topic strings. If you're like most people, you use the word topic very generally, whenever you mean something like concept or idea. For this tutorial, I'm using it more specifically. By topic, I mean the idea that a sentence is about. Every sentence contains a lot of information, especially the kinds of sentences that we find in an academic paper. But if you want to know what a sentence is about, you can probably point to only 1 or 2 words. And if the sentence is well written, you'll find those words in predictable places, at or near the beginning of the sentence, or in one of the grammatical subjects, usually the grammatical subject of the independent clause. Let's apply this to the example. The first sentence identifies structure as the topic of the entire passage. It's in the sentences that follow that we need to pay attention to location. Each reference to structure is at the beginning. Structure is also the grammatical subject of each independent clause. It's not an object, it's not a verb. The fourth sentence follows the same pattern. The only difference is that the passage uses the word model instead of structure. In the next sentence, the reference to structure is delayed by 3 words, but it's still very close to the beginning, and it's also the grammatical subject of the independent clause. The next reference to structure is at the beginning of the sentence, and once again, it's a grammatical subject. The reference in the next sentence is not a grammatical subject, and we've come back to the word model, so there is a bit of a deviation here. But it is at the beginning of the sentence where it focuses the reader's attention on the topic. The final sentence takes us back to the familiar pattern. The reference to structure is in the first few words, and those words are the grammatical subject of the independent clause. I call structure and model topic strings because they identify what the sentences are about, and because they're in the locations where readers expect to find the topics. I say that the topic strings are consistent because they repeat the same words, the word structure, or a closely related synonym, the word model. The result is very tight coherence. Consistent topic strings do more than remind the audience that we're discussing the structure of DNA. They remind the audience that this is the focus of the passage, the most important idea, the one that it's about. Not every section of your writing will benefit from such a long series of topic strings, but many sections will, especially the ones that discuss the most important ideas in your paper. So here's a revision tip. Before you submit a paper, look closely at the way each sentence begins. If you don't find this kind of repetition in the most important sections, the paper might be less coherent than it should be. Go back and make some changes. Let's turn to a different example. It's from another academic paper, not a famous paper, just an average paper. It represents mainstream academic writing. Again, please pause the video long enough to read the passage. A typical paper in psychology is about an experimental study performed on human participants. If I asked you what this passage is about, you would easily tell me that it's about the participants. That's because participants are mentioned 7 times. 5 of the references use the word participants. The other 2 use the pronoun they. Now that you know what to look for, the topic string should be pretty obvious. The passage contains 6 sentences. Each sentence begins with a reference to the participants, and all 7 of the references are grammatical subjects. There are no exceptions. Obviously, every section of the paper is not organized this way, but many sections are. Let me point out 2 things that I haven't mentioned yet. First, notice that the passage uses both the active voice and the passive voice to place the topic strings at the beginnings of the sentences and to make them the grammatical subjects. Helping us organize information effectively is the most important function of the passive voice. Second, notice that, just like synonyms, pronouns can also achieve coherence. But you must be sure to repeat the actual topic strings often and at regular intervals. I know that the repetition here might seem a little monotonous. However, the most important stylistic consideration for academic writing is not beauty, it's clarity. That's especially the case when it comes to coherence. If you want to add a little more variety than you've seen in today's examples, I think you could do so. Please be careful not to use too many pronouns or synonyms, and try to keep the topic strings close to the beginnings of the sentences. Thanks for watching. Say what you mean.